Hey Heidi, how you going?
Good, how are you?
Doing pretty well. Enjoying my Monday afternoon and your Tuesday morning.
Joining you from the future.
Exactly, yeah. Good to talk to you. I'm glad we were able to finally get this rescheduled and worked out.
I know, it's super awesome. Like, I've been looking forward to doing a live stream. It's my first live stream. So, pretty cool to be doing it with you, I must say. I
Yeah,
don't
glad to
have
be on.
the lighting effect, but one day I will get the cool lights.
Incremental upgrades, right?
First, I need to get a sit stand desk first, and
Yep,
then a giant monitor, and then the lighting.
exactly. But yeah, like I think well, the first time we met was in India.
India,
Yeah,
yeah.
at the Data Platform Summit back in like that Donald's comment, your hair matches my lights. So, uh, yeah, 2018. I think 2018, 2019 sounds about right. Somewhere way back when. Seems like a lifetime ago.
I know. I think it might have been 2019. We
Yeah.
could check. I think we could check the data platform summit records, but that was
Um,
that was unreal. That was the first time I've been to India, and I can't believe we had not met before. Especially because you're in Seattle. I visit Seattle like
exactly.
once a year, and I'm like, how have I not met you before?
To be fair, I like that was the first year I was just getting started with the circuits on conferences and everything else, so I hadn't really quite built too much momentum in the MVP community yet. But considering that kind of topic, I know it's your first this year, getting that award and everything. But I think as a little summary for the people tuning in and everything, if you want to give a bit of background about yourself, I think also definitely mentioning that you're in the MVP community now would be great.
Oh, totally. So a little bit about me. You've probably worked out from the accent that I'm Australian, although I'm still recovering from being sick last week, so my voice is not quite 100%. Um, this is the first year I've been awarded Data Platform MVP, which I'm super excited about. So if you don't know, MVP is a community award. It's based on all your community contributions, your input to the product team, and everything you do around the Microsoft stack as well as in the community. So to be awarded that is phenomenal. I've aspired to get it for years because I just see everyone in the community that has those titles. I'm like, I want to be part of that group, but you don't have to have the title to be part of it, which is really cool. I was welcomed into the community, regardless of whether I'm MVP
Hmm.
or not. But it's definitely super awesome to get the title. And I must say, I have really awesome colleagues. They made me a cake with MVP on it. They gave me these, I forget, was it monochromed glasses and a bottle of gin, and just been super supportive. And everyone in the MVP community has been really cool. And you get this cool hoodie, which I love because who doesn't love a good hoodie? Uh, and the glass park is tucked away until I tidy my desk where I can nicely display it with the cool little ring. Um, but
Yeah.
it does mean that I play with all things data, and I love Microsoft. As you can tell from, I have an Azure shirt. I'm usually running around in Microsoft gear. I have the Surface headphones. I have a Surface laptop. It's just because I love all things Microsoft.
I said mostly when they
Yeah,
work.
there's a few half baked things which could do with improving, but you've got to take the
Yep.
good with the bad,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
some with a grain of salt. Oh, and I should say
Exactly.
I work for a consulting company here in Australia called Expose. And if anyone's looking for a job in Australia and you're in the data space, do reach out to us because we're always hiring anywhere in Australia. Um, we would love to have you.
Excellent. Appreciate the introductions and like again, congrats on finally getting involved officially in the MVP community because I know you've definitely been heavily involved with it in past and everything else for years even prior to that. So you were an unofficial MVP even before you became the official one.
Oh yeah, and when it was a lot more in person conferences, it was quite well known that all my vacation days would be spent traveling the world, attending conferences. Like I met Rita in India. I've
Yeah,
been to New Zealand for Difinity. I've been to America for SQLSaturdays and for PASS Summit, and I'll be back there again in November, and then I'll be back in New Zealand in November to do another round of conferences. So I'm excited, but I love it that much. I love hanging out with the community. I love talking all things data and tech, and you can't necessarily always do that from your home desk. So,
Or would you want to? So,
yeah, I mean, I live alone, so it's nice to be able to see people.
exactly. Excellent though. Yeah, and I know, like, based off of the title and description, we're gonna dig a bit into some service discussions today, and sensitivity labels, which well, are already immediately mentioned is not security, but is related to things that are a broader conversation about security, but not directly related to security.
Oh, definitely not. Although it always comes up every time I talk about sensitivity labels. People assume it has an element of security, and it does, but it's one of those like little elements. Not don't rely on it to keep your data secure.
Exactly.
But no, do we want to check some of it out?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's show people what it is to start with. So this, I guess, I heard about sensitivity labels probably, I want to say 3 or 4 years ago. And I watched a demonstration about the Office 365 and how you could apply labeling to Word documents and Excel files and have that transfer to all your users. So you could restrict people from accessing files, you could share files, you could, label files to be really descriptive to say this is confidential to HR, to finance, why not? And then I think it was late last year, I saw that it had made its way into the data platform. And I thought, let's check this out. Let's see, what is it? What's it look like? How do I use it? How do I set it up? So that was where my journey started, was just I wanted to see what it looked like for the data platform. And the first bit is one that data platform people don't always see, and it's the Microsoft Office 365 Admin Center. So this is probably looks foreign to data people, but this is what your cloud and your Office 365 administrators would see all the time. And if we go into the left-hand side, there's this thing called information protection. And I've already got it loaded. With information protection, that's where sensitivity labels lies. So previously it used to be Microsoft Information Protection, or MIP, or you'd hear it with the Azure Information Protection. Now they just call it Information Protection. And if you click labels, that's what sensitivity labels are. They're just a label. But they're a label that's managed on the Office 365 side, which I find really interesting, because as a data professional, you don't necessarily play in this world, yet you need this world to work with sensitivity labels in the data space. So it's kind of like getting the ability to play with this in an org. If you're not in that team, you can look at what's called the Microsoft developer options, which give you the ability to just spin up a tenant, your own tenant, and play with labels. So this tenant is actually my HeidiHasting.com one. That means I can have free reign on it. So I went ahead and created a whole bunch of different labels. And these labels on their own, they just sit there. They're not available to anyone. They don't become available in any of the products until you do a policy. So let's say I go in, I create my labels. I might have one that says draft. In fact, I didn't create it this morning, but there was one called draft. But you have all these labels. Then you go into what's called a policy, and that's where you can say, hey, this label is now available to people within my org. And then when you make it available, you can say who gets to have access to it, whether that access is online or offline. So when it's online, it will constantly talk back to the tenant to say, do you still have access? If it's offline, you could potentially take the file, put it on a USB, wander around for a couple of days, come back, and then it will check whether you still have access to the label. So I've created a bunch of policies. And the one thing I will point out is this order. This order is really important, because if you have multiple labels applied to different data sets, and then in something like Power BI where you can combine different data sets and you want to bring them in, it's going to take the highest order. It will treat that as the priority. So that's how this ordering comes into play. So now you've seen the labels. So this is where we create them. This is where we maintain them. This is where we manage them.
Excellent.
And then where do we use them? We can use them in Word, we can use them in Excel, we can use them in SharePoint and Teams, but we want to see what they look like in the data platform space. So I'm going to switch over to Power BI, and I'm going to show you the first thing is in the workspace. So you'll see here we have this sensitivity column. So now we can see the sensitivity labeling that's been applied. Fun fact, even though workbook is an Excel file and you can apply a label to it, when you load it to Power BI service, it has no recollection of that label. In fact, it won't even let you manually apply the label. It just ignores it completely. So that one has a label, doesn't display it. In the same way, if I take that data set and bring it into a Power BI report, it recognizes the Excel file has the label and then treats that as the sensitivity on the Power BI report. So it's quite fun like that. But something else that's really fun is the first time you go to use labels, you might find this experience. Now let me see if my Power BI will load. This is like a brand new user on my tenant. They have no access to no labels. Look what happens. Sensitivity label option. Oh, I should point out, this is where you would apply the sensitivity label, up in the ribbon. You got the sensitivity option. It's grayed out. It's grayed out for two reasons. One, if you're not logged in, but in this case I'm logged in, because the only way it knows what labels you have access to is to go to your Office 365 tenant settings, go to that information protection and pull back the labels that you have the access to. So in this case, my cheeky test account has no label access. But if I was using a different account, so let's see if Power BI will play nicely. Go to this one. This is my HeidiHasting.com account. It has 4 labels. And so once you have a Power BI file, you have multiple ways. Like Microsoft loves to do the whole, let's not give you one way to do something, let's give you a whole bunch. And, and you confuse yourself with which one to do and which one to tell your people to do. But if you work in Power BI Desktop to build your reports, there's only one label per report. So you can come in and go, let's give this the label 2. And then what happens is in the little status bar, it will put label 2. And then if you go ahead and publish that up to the service, it would put label 2 in that column. So it doesn't do anything special like Word and Excel will create things like watermarks and footers and all that cool stuff. And it'll actually make it, it'll block a user from opening a file if they don't have access to the label. But Power BI Desktop won't. So that's where that security is not the same as the Office 365 security around labels. Because I could go send this Power BI file to another user. It would still let them open it. Now, if we go into service, sure, we can see that there's a label looking at it this way, but how many people do you know that sit all day and work in this view? Not a lot. You usually open up a report. So how do you know, when you open a report, how do you know what the label is? Really cool. They display it right up the top center of the screen, right next to the report name. You get the label and you get it in the drop down here. So there's 2 ways to see it. And then the fun thing with this is if this gets put into, this is a report. If it was a data set, you can also apply a label. If it's a paginated report, those people who've got premium, you can apply a label as well, but you can only apply your label inside service for a premium report. So if we were in here, let's see if I have one. I don't believe I have one today, but let's just do this. So if we go to settings and we scroll, this is where you would set it. So when you upload a paginated report, you would upload that to Power BI service or publish it, and then go into the settings on the actual report file, and then you can toggle the sensitivity label here. And because the same way Word and Excel, you log in, Power BI Desktop, you log in, Power BI Service, you've logged in, so it knows to look at your Office 365 information protection, grab the labels you have access to, and that's what you see in the list. So if you don't see any, it's because your account doesn't have a label or your organization doesn't have any.
Gotcha.
And I forgot to mention, one thing I really forgot to mention is labels, sensitivity labels are only available in Office 365 if you have either an E5 license
Okay.
on your tenant or the Azure Information Protection P1 and P2 plan licenses. They were sort of the precursor. But so if you
Gotcha. Okay.
spin up a demo tenant, what you want to do is if you get that Microsoft developer program, you create a new tenant, spin it up. I think you get like 60 days or something and about 25 licenses to play with. If you spin that up, make sure you put an E5 license on, and then you can get into all the information protection space. So I should have pointed that out at the start. But if you want to toggle a setting, you can do it here. The other fun fact, so reports, data sets, dashboards, and paginated reports, yes, and even the new data mart. But what's really fun with all those, it's at the highest level. So you would think, when you work in Azure SQL and it talks about sensitivity labels, you can do it at the column level. So you can do a column within a table, within a database.
Okay.
But when you're in the Power BI side, you can't. So even though a data mart under the hood is like an Azure SQL database, there's only one label for every data mart. You can't do multiple labels. And I think, if I remember one of my screens, let's see, I think I put it on this guy. This is a fun way to wake up in the morning. Error. Don't worry. It's just cached. But it is really cool. Henry the Owl, so cute. I'm waiting for someone to create a gallery of Microsoft error messages. Like there's Henry the Owl for Power BI. If you ever get Teams, it's a little dog chewing a power cord. It's so cute.
I like it.
Now let's go to this space. So you see here, I got the data mart. Data marts only have one sensitivity label, but you think about that and it's like, if you're going to apply a label to a data set, that's one thing, but a whole database to have just one label, this is one of the things I think is not quite there yet. When Microsoft introduced sensitivity labels,
because that should be like, I would honestly say like you should be able to, I think, maybe choose to apply it at this level, but individually also the table level or something else I think could be good, because you might have a lot of things stored into there, right?
I agree. It's because, I mean, at the end of the day, it is just a label, but if you think about what you would use that label for in the Office 365 world, where you could go as low as an Excel file or a Word document and as high as like a SharePoint site and a team script, you kind of want the same granularity across the data platform as well. Like if they're going to do it in Azure SQL and let you do it at a column level, why not do the same in the data mart side? And maybe that's being worked on, who knows. It is something that I think is still it's not quite there yet. It's not at that enterprise maturity. It's there enough for organizations to get into it, but I'm not sure, like I'd bet the bank on it. I think even when I looked at it, firstly, I sort of went, okay, if I'm an organization, I'm creating Power BI reports, I got this option to do sensitivity labeling. What does that mean for my org? Where would I use it? And I sort of went, where would I use it? Why would I use it? And I go, well, it's a thing. And a little that governance, that awareness piece that organizations can do. And I sort of go, well, if I used it to say, or to say this was a certified like report, the organization is comfortable to have it out in the world. Or if I used it to say the data set is bronze, it's raw data, it's not, it's silver, it's been vetted, you can use it for reporting, or it's gold, it's great for end of financial year reporting, it's been reviewed, it's been vetted. That, I can see as an org where I'd use it. Then I just have to watch how Microsoft changes the functionality over time to see whether my business use case still fits with how they do it. Because I know, so on the Azure SQL side, I don't have my demo database here, but I've got it inside. I've got some screenshots that I thought I would just share, because this is what I found fun, is inside Azure SQL. if we look at what that looks like, so you saw a bit of Power BI. Azure SQL allows you to add sensitivity labels, but they are not the Office 365 sensitivity labels. So
Gotcha. Okay.
you look inside Azure and you go into an Azure SQL resource, you go into the security and data discovery, and classification uses the exact same terminology, sensitivity label, but that list is managed within Azure. So there's no link between the two. So when you're creating things like Power BI reports and you hook that up to Azure SQL and you bring in the data, they're not the same label. So you need to add the label on the Power BI side when you're working with Azure SQL data. And in the same way, if you then have something like Purview, Purview's really cool. Purview gives you the option. I should zoom this a bit because it's probably little. So if you saw my tenant has all these reports, Purview will show the sensitivity label, so that's kind of cool. So if you're doing governance inside Purview and you hook it up to your Power BI tenant and you do a scan, Purview will show that label, which is great. It shows it next to the report, same way Power BI does. But then when you get to things like the Excel workbook, it just, same way Power BI said it doesn't have a sensitivity label, so to Purview. Purview just goes, that file doesn't exist at all. Which is fun because you sort of like, hang on, I don't have all my data estate now because Purview doesn't recognize a workbook. Power BI doesn't recognize it has a label, but you know the actual underlying file has a label and is in the service. But when you get to Azure SQL, Purview sensitivity label, even though this particular database, I have 2 labels applied, Purview does not apply them because Purview is using the Office 365 labels. And when I label them in Azure SQL, it's not the same. So you need to be aware when you're working right across the data estate, how does each product treat that label? And then how does it treat it when you're going across products? Which is kind of scary. And then an even more fun one is if you get a file and put no data in it, add a label, save it, put it in blob storage, scan it with Purview. This top file, these 2 files are exactly the same file. The only difference is the bottom one has data in it. The label appears for the bottom one. The label does not appear for the top one.
I think there's a degree of intelligent labeling that it does automatically based off of what's contained in the files, I believe, right?
Yes, you can auto label. That's a really cool feature. It's one that I haven't like road tested to the fullest. When I had a bit of a play with it, I couldn't get it functional for what I wanted, but I was just having a play, so I didn't go too hard at it. But it's really cool. So if you're an org, there's a couple of things to be aware of. One, you can auto label. 2, you can make labeling mandatory, and you can make it mandatory for like every Power BI object. So if you were to say, hey, as an org, we want to use sensitivity labels, you can then force labels to be applied, and you can either auto apply labels across a lot of the data estates. You can default the label when it comes to, say, Power BI. You can say, right, everything that gets loaded to service will have this label. And then you can also see that in Purview, which is quite cool, I think. The different options they give you as an org. Like, you can soft roll out sensitivity labels. You can put them on your tenant, get your E5 license, set them up, spin them out, start to get your users adopting to it. And then you can just toggle on, this is now mandatory, like 6 to 12 months later. And then you don't have to worry, are people applying labels? You can force the label.
I was going to say, like, that's, I do like from an admin perspective, when you have the ability to provide some, like, I'm going to encourage you to be able to do this yourself, but if you don't, it's still going to happen anyways. But you have a window of time to ensure that this happens.
Yeah. If you treat that label like, hey, everything is in draft, like you might just do a label that says draft and default that as your label. And as an org, that's kind of cool, because then if someone starts publishing Power BI reports all over the place and sharing them, if they're defaulted to draft, then everyone knows that, hey, these reports aren't quite signed off. They're there, you can have a look at them, but they're not in a signed off state. And then your report developers can go back in and go, oh, I'm going to apply the label that now says, yeah, this is gold standard, this is good to go, this is certified as available for use. So you can protect yourself in a way that, doesn't sort of make your users feel a bit of backlash, because some users, when you roll stuff out on them, even though it can help them, they might go, no, this is overhead, this is stuff I don't like, this is extra things. But I think having that soft rollout is kind of cool. And I should have pointed out, another thing I forgot is tenant admins. Tenant admins in Power BI. Now let's make sure we're using a tenant admin account to see this. Let's switch on over to this one. In the admin portal, I totally neglected to say, this is the bit here. Admins on a Power BI tenant. So either your Power BI administrator or your global admin needs to come in and turn on that sensitivity labels can be used in your tenant. So you can even do like a pilot. So you can go, let's give it to a specific group of users and have people pilot it. So you might have your business champions, get that group of users familiar with it, play with it, get it bedded down as to what your processes are, and then open it up to the wider org. And you can also do this cool one, downstream. Downstream's cool because if and someone's gone and put one on a data set, Power BI knows that there's a label on the data set, so it automatically puts the label on the report you're building. And if from multiple data sets with different sensitivity labels, it will take the highest priority one and put that on the report, which is pretty cool. And then there's all this other stuff, right? So you think about, this is how you maintain, this is how you administer, this is how you create labels, this is how you use labels. But then you can also monitor the use of labels. So inside your Office 365 on your information protection, you can see where labels have been used. So I can see what's the top label applied to my content, how many labels have that content. In the same way, if you're using Purview, Purview goes a little bit deeper, and if you look at the Purview, you get the insights. So you can see the labeling that's applied across your entire data estate. So this is where, if you're in auditing or governance, you can go look and go, are people using the labeling we set up? Is the labeling granularity that we've set up right or wrong? So that's really cool. But then from a security standpoint is where it gets interesting, right? So if you're inside Power BI service, let's say I have a Power BI report. I've got a sensitivity label applied. Let's use this guy. Oops, this one. So I've got these reports, right? Users like to do the whole export to Excel. Now, just this one, I don't leave myself notes. So we got one here, right? It's got label to demo. Into this data set, and you say export to Excel. So you export the data. Yeah, we'll just say this is taps in, because any user, even if it's to the label or not, if they this data. So it's not like if I get my cheeky demo account, gave them access to this workspace labels, you saw in Power BI they do that account. If they get access to the workspace though, that's not going to block them from looking at these reports. So that label in Power BI, it's not a blocker. Where it does block is if Chicky went and exported and then opened it in Excel. Now, may or may not, it doesn't like to change accounts today. So we'll see how it treats it.
Yeah, Microsoft's never been too good about account or tenant changes, at least fluidly.
Yeah, some things are really good. Like the Edge profiles are really awesome for doing testing and trying out accounts.
And I would actually argue that's partially Google's done a good job of incorporating that in their Chromium platform, not necessarily Microsoft.
Oh yeah. I love this has gone right into recovery. Okay, there we go. So you can see here you get an indicator to say this file is protected. Yep, cool. Let's enable that. Now you can see that this particular file, it hasn't done it, but what it should have done is in the status bar it would show a label. But if this wasn't the right account, if this was an account that had no access, so that cheeky account, that file would not open. And I reckon I've got a screenshot in here, so let's grab this. Gotchas. This is what it would do. So this is where the security is there, because this then goes from the Power BI world to the Excel world. And so Power BI does not have that security control. It only has the label. But then when you do export to Excel, you're shifting into the Excel world. And so when you go to load that Excel file, that security mechanism taps in and goes, that account doesn't have access to set that label. And therefore, I'm not going to let you open the file.
Gotcha.
So that's kind of cool.
Okay.
So if you accidentally give someone access to a workspace that's got a sensitivity label that they should not see, they can still see their report. They can still, do print, screenshots, all that sort of thing. But as soon as they're trying to export that data out, no-go zone, which is quite cool. That's where the security does come into play. Now, I'm trying to think, there was another one I wanted to show everyone, which was another gotcha I noticed. And I don't think I've got it in this slide deck. But every so often, if it's a relatively new label, sometimes you'll be able to apply the label in things like Excel and Power BI Desktop. And when you publish it to service, sometimes this won't display correctly. That's okay. If you notice that it's empty, just go into the actual settings and update it.
Okay.
So you can just update the label here. And the other cool one is, like we talked about, adding and maintaining and monitoring and governing. If you're a security auditor or you're someone who works in the governance space and you want to know when people chop and change that label, it comes up in the logging on the Office 365 side. So you can also put in, so we talked about, you could make a label mandatory. You can add labels to your data estate, but you can also put in an extra control when you're setting up the label policies. There's one to say, must provide a reason if you downgrade the sensitivity label. So if that option's been applied and someone says, okay, this is no longer a confidential report, this is going to be like a label 2, a lower priority, and they save it, they have to provide a justification, and then that gets logged. So then you can go through and review. And the reason you might want to do that sort of review, other than good governance practices and security and auditing, is also to know if you've got the right labels. Because you think about it, if someone's constantly changing it, like, that's kind of indicative of, okay, either we need better training or training guidance on the use of labels, or we need different labels. So it's quite cool, but there's so many things you can do with sensitivity labels. As cool as they are, I don't see a lot of orgs using them. So don't be surprised if you're a user out there and you've never seen them in the wild. If you've never seen them, don't be surprised. It's kind of one of those features that Microsoft added to the data estate, but there hasn't been a huge push to use it.
I mean, I think so. I mean, in general, I feel like sensitivity labels in general haven't been hugely pushed or discussed that much. Like they are there, and I think they can be very useful, especially when being able, as you mentioned, through combining sources, would automatically inherit the most sensitive label as companies roll out larger implementations of shared data sets and everything else. But I think it's an underutilized feature for sure.
Oh, exactly. I've worked in highly regulated companies and government agencies, and I've seen them do sensitivity labeling for their emails. And that's kind of where it stopped. Or it's where it started, and I left the org after that. But they started with emails. So I'm not surprised that it's still not yet got into all things. Like, I don't see a lot of SharePoint sites using it either.
Yeah.
But I find, as a data pro, it's like I just want to use anything that's available to me. And this became available. So I'm like, how can I use it in my day-to-day? Like, I even look at, this is my demo tenant. I can even use that label to work out what demo was it for. Like, I might put in a label on my tenant for the different demos that I do, or whether a data set is there or not there. Like, is it something that's been vetted or not vetted? Because sure, you can do certified data sets. That's one way of knowing if your data set's been certified, but this is another way, is to be able to label things, label reports, label data sets. You know, I wish it was there for workbooks just from a consistency standpoint, but the fact that it's not, I'm not super bummed about either. But I think it's just really cool.
I agree, and I think auditing governance and a lot of the admin and tenant management, I think, is something that's part of the natural grow up story. Is a lot of small to medium businesses, or certainly enterprises, they start to utilize this more and more. Like, these are the kind of things that help to ensure that things are kept secure, but also the scale and scope creep doesn't increase too much, and everybody ends up, as something that Microsoft loves is data siloing.
Oh yeah, I love the 5 minutes to wow. Power BI was 5 minutes to wow, and everyone loves it. And well, most people love it. I love it. Everyone loves it. But then you get that whole, and now how do we go to enterprise growth? And like I said, like governance, like I think we all know governance is important, but it's like when I worked in software development, testing was the thing that got dropped, testing and documentation first. And now I look at that in sort of Power BI and data states, and I go, governance is something that everyone knows is important, but often it gets benched. It gets benched because it's like, we've got to deliver the report and the data and get all that working and give everyone access. Oh, and then we'll work out governance after.
Exactly.
So it's, and then everyone gets the whole, let's turn spaghetti into organized chaos. And then governance comes right into the frame, and then we look at things like sensitivity labels and what are all the features. Oh, so something else, if you work cross orgs, we know that things across Office 365 tenants, yes, we have that B2B sort of integration. You can have guests on your tenant from other tenants. Yeah, sensitivity labels does not like that. So because it's tied to your Office 365. So if you think, hey, I'm going to give, I could give you access read onto my tenant as a guest in my tenant, but because you have your own tenant with your own Office 365, Power BI is like, oh, hang on, I don't understand your labeling and you don't understand my labeling because you're in a different tenant. So that cross-tenant scenario is not quite there yet with the labeling either. So
100%.
If you're in an org and you're doing things that are cross-tenant, I've worked in one org where they build a bunch of Power BI reports and then they share them to a third party. Kind of equivalent to ISVs, but the third party was delivering a service that relates to that org, but they're not part of the org, so they would give them Power BI reports to work with. But of course, because they're guests, that B2B integration doesn't know what to do. But it's ever evolving. So it's like, this is what it looked like today. Like, even when I've done this demo using sensitivity labels over time, I always find something new. Like, there's different gotchas. Like, I create a label and go, well, where is it? Why isn't it in Power BI yet? Sometimes it takes up to 24 hours to roll out. And then I had one where I put a label on a report, I published the report, and the sensitivity column was just blank. And I'm like, oh, I wasn't expecting that, And you do different things and you start to see how it behaves, but that's how it behaves today. So always keep an eye out on the release notes to see what Microsoft's doing. I mean, they released the data mart and I went, okay, data mart is Azure SQL, so that'll act like Azure SQL acts. And then I went in and I'm like, oh, it's just one label at the data mart level. And I was like, well, I wasn't expecting that. And so I think as things grow and progress, always check back to go, what's the functionality look like today? I've had Purview scan my Power BI tenant and none of the labels appeared. And then and they had like GUIDs, and I'm like, what the? I gave it like an hour, came back, refreshed, suddenly the labels are displayed correctly. So it's always changing, but
Well, and keep an
it's just
eye on
not
the release wave as well to even see if there's anything upcoming specifically. Like, is there anything mentioned around any further integrations, like specifically pertaining to sensitivity labels at all?
I wish I could answer that, but reading the release notes is in my to-do list.
There you
I
go.
haven't
And I was gonna
actually
say
done it
like
yet.
for the next time you do this, yeah, because like the release wave, I've already skimmed it, but it came out what the newest one was 2.5 weeks ago, something like that.
Yeah, yeah, recent, definitely recent. I've
Mm-hmm.
started seeing people posting like their top 10, and it's also cool to see where things drop off, because sometimes as an org, you might look at the release notes and go, "Oh yes, this is slated to come out like later this year." Always keep an eye on it because it doesn't mean it's guaranteed to happen. So sometimes you'll see it there. The dates might move as they work through the products and everything. Sometimes it disappears and goes off the release wave and is no longer there. And that can just happen like any company working on functionality or features. Sometimes something else gets a higher priority and it goes on. Other times it's just a typo in the release wave and it hasn't, it's supposed
Exactly.
to be there and wasn't there. So it's, don't, you know, don't bet your next project on it, but have an awareness of what's coming up, because sometimes things get released early. Like I remember what I haven't looked at is how PowerPoint interacts with these labels, because of course now we've got the PowerPoint integration with Power BI.
I think it's just essentially an embedded report, so
Yeah,
I'm assuming it inherits whatever information that would come through a normal like embed page if you were to put that into a website or something.
that would be fun to play with. I'm going to add that as a try that out, because PowerPoint is an Office file, so labeling, it would have labeling of its own, and then Power BI in PowerPoint would be different again. Could be fun. But yeah,
Interesting. Yeah.
it's definitely something to keep an eye on, play with. And the other thing is, like, even though a release wave will say this is coming out, actually try it to see how it's going to work for your org, because sensitivity labels came out and people might just assume you can play with them and not realize, oh, I need an E5. Oh, that's this group of people in my org, and then go, now I should see it in Power BI. No, you need your Power BI
Hmm.
admin to turn it on, and then you get that far, and then you go, okay, now I need this label for these people and this label for these people, and then see how that then looks. And of course each person operates differently, so then you've got to look at how we're going to explain to users to use the labeling. Are we going to tell them to use the settings in service? Are we going to show them how to use it in Power BI desktop? And then
Yep.
It's all those different things. Definitely come with some user training and guidance to help your users on board with this functionality. But play with it, see how it works or how it doesn't work. If it's not quite there yet for everything you want to do, then maybe it's not the feature to use. And that's okay. You don't have to use everything just because it's there.
So, and the biggest one with
Uh,
this is I like as I mentioned, it's the grow up story idea. If you have 5 reports and like 3 data sets, you probably don't need sensitivity levels between this. It's a very small organization, but like by the, I'd say like at that point where you have enough information out there in teams where the company is large enough that not everybody is basically just working together between 15 employees and direct communication doesn't always happen, so the labels need to communicate for you what the data is and its permissions. That's when you want to start using these. Is when there's going to be a lot more people connecting to this than you probably will ever interact with, but that might be still being shared out to the larger organization or accessed or distributed or combined with other stuff. That's when I think these come into play. So it kind of has to do with both the size of your org in terms of probably people consuming this information or connecting to it, and then also the uh, just the number of unique artifacts that are in the service as well. As both of those grow, then it creates a greater and greater consideration to have this. And at some point, you kind of cross a line where it just becomes practical and useful to use it. But it's a very kind of on a case by case basis of when that threshold gets crossed.
Oh, absolutely. And I think you hit the nail on the head there. And it's also that case of, are you going to just use it for like Power BI, or are you going to use it
Hmm.
for your Azure SQL, or are you going to use it for your Office 365, your Word, your Excel, your emails? It's like, are you going to do it across everything or just one thing? And it may even be that you got to keep your finger on the pulse to what your organization's doing, because your data estate might be small, but if you're a company that's big enough that you're sending emails everywhere and you've got Word and you've got SharePoint and you've got Teams, if they're looking at it for that space, you as a data pro want to jump in and go, hey, I know, you're looking at it for the rest of the org for these other things, but by the way, it's now in the data estate. So we need to talk about how's that going to work for the data platform? How's it going to work for the Power Platform? When you're looking at that suite. So it's getting that joint conversation going. Sometimes we are siloed, and it's like you have your cloud admins, you have your Office 365, you have your data, and now it's like saying, hey, you all need to get together and make some joint decisions here, come to an agreement, because it impacts everyone.
Pretty much, exactly.
The fun of it and the challenge of it, because then everyone's like, who owns it?
Well, that's a whole different, it's a hot potato story of like, is this mine? Nope, it's yours. Nope, it's yours.
I know, and do you want to own it? Like, especially like get familiar with it, get an awareness of it, and go, this is not security, it's labeling, and then it has less like fear of being the owner of something that has the word security attached to it. Because no one wants to be the person involved in a data breach. So it's like, no, this is just a label. How you use the label is up to you, but it's just a label. And I think that
100%.
That walks it back a little bit from the fear of being the one owning sensitivity labels. It's like, if you just treat it like a label and a governance piece and a metadata, because when we love metadata, so why would you not want to have more options to add metadata around your data estate? The more the merrier.
As long as it doesn't add noise or confusion, yes. Then I would agree.
That is true.
Because you can technically create you can technically create any sensitivity label you want. So it hopefully they make sense in the especially when they they're overriding each other. The permissions are actually they're not permissions, but each of the buckets, so to speak, makes sense to the organization, and it's part of like both a data and secure sensitivity dictionary that they have. That's an understood language, right?
Well, that's true, and as much as you can. I mean, I don't know what the limit is on the number of labels, but you don't want too many. If you think about that tiny little button on the ribbon is where it's going to create a drop down that's going to display all the labels you have access to. If you're a finance user, a HR user, a business analyst, that list might be small, but if you're the person maintaining the list, that list could be scrolling screens, and you still have to use them yourself. So you don't want that to be too big. And like I said, it should correspond to some sort of index to say, these are the labels, this is what they mean. And then if you just want to put it unlabeled in there, just say, right, the default is going to be unlabeled, and that just indicates no one has dealt with this thing. But you might
could have unlabeled. You could have like label required, like some kind of a flag, basically, that is it's a label to indicate that it needs a label.
Yeah, and that might even just trigger the conversation to go, hey, I was looking at this new report you built for me, and I noticed that it doesn't have a label yet. Let's get that organized. Why doesn't it have a label? And it might just be, no, they're still working out which business unit owns the data, and therefore they don't yet know whose label is going to get applied.
Precisely.
These are all things that get worked through with all those governance conversations. And labels can get removed as well. So you got to be aware of, well, what happens when the label gets removed? Like if you decide that label's not working for the org, do you actually remove it? Because you may have things using it, or do you just sort of rename the label to say, it's getting deprecated?
So what happens then to any existing data sets if you were to delete a label from the list after it's been applied?
Not sure. This is something I haven't tried.
I'd be curious. Like I'm assuming
it should be tried.
It either goes back to I would imagine it probably just goes back to blank, like just no, no label assigned, unless you have a default label set that auto applies. At that point, I'm assuming it resets back to that.
Well, it could be kind of weird, because then you look and go, if you delete a label, is that going to trigger the whole you have to justify removing the label comment, and then, or is that
Yeah.
an auditing problem, or will it just stay there until you remove it? A bit like, web apps used to leave things in drop-down lists even though they were removed, until you actually manually remove it yourself. So it's kind of there, but you can't add it for future. So it's something I'd have to play with to see exactly how that operates. Because the other one is you can roll out new label policies. So you might do a reorg and go, okay, these labels were accessible to these groups via the label policy, but now we need to change that because we've done a reorg. So when you apply a new policy, that gets rolled out, and then the online checking would occur. The offline wouldn't occur until the offline period finishes. So, you've got to look at those things as well. And even that offline access, even though it doesn't apply to Power BI, the security that comes with it, it does apply to like Excel. So if you think, hey, we did a reorg, a whole bunch of people got made redundant, they leave their org. If for some reason they have the files that have that data in, and it's offline access, they can still open the file until it tries to do the check back. So that might change the way you define offline, because some people go, oh, we need offline in case there's no network or something like that. But then you also go, but this is a security risk because it's not checking that label all the time. So you might do offline for like a day and go, well, that gives us a window. If we have any network issues, we can still have our data and work with it. But after a day, it's going to check back with Homebase and go, do I still have access to this label?
And one of the reasons why, as you mentioned, is sensitivity labels are not security.
Indeed.
Yeah. Excellent.
They're not security. No. And they're not the same across the data estate. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Label, sensitivity label is just label. I'm not even sure why it has sensitivity in the name, but I guess that's what they went with. Because there's another one. What is it in Purview? I think they call it the classification, because there's a difference between classification and sensitivity. And then classification lets you do some of the auto labeling, where you can say, hey, this is like a social security number, or this is a name, this is a phone number, this is a credit card, all that sort of fun stuff. So then they had both. And I do wonder what's going to happen over time. It's like, is Azure Data Estate and Power Platform, are they going to somehow merge to both use Office 365 labeling as opposed to having separate labeling? Or is Purview going to start to recognize both of them? Because if you think Purview's that, sort of data catalog, next level data catalog, it's pulling all that information in. But if it's only taking the Office 365 labeling and not the Azure labeling, it's kind of like, well, do you even use the labels in Azure if it's not going to recognize them in Purview?
Yeah. That's very fair.
So and then where is Datamart going to go?
Yeah. I'm still like, that's such a half-baked thing for me at the moment. I love the idea of it. I think it's going to be a great grow-up story for small SMB, small to medium businesses, as they kind of a kids' first database type thing. It's a very easy thing to spin up for people who have their data in flat files, and then eventually there will be like hopefully an option to like migrate between that and click a button and have it pop over to Azure if you wanted to stand up in a more of an enterprise environment. But that's what I see it as someday. But I think there's a lot of features that are listed on the release wave plan for it that will be out in 6 to 12 months, that when those come out, it will be a lot more practical once it's more robust and configurable, when you can actually have external sources write to it rather than just read data from it, all these things that make it an actual database.
I did. I have the exact same vibes on this one. I was like, oh, it's like the access in the cloud. Like, how business users, they have access to access, so they started building access databases, and they went prolific throughout orgs, and then it was like, rein it in, let's enterprise scale this, let's combine your data, let's create data warehouses. And now it's like, now you can do it in the cloud. You can spin up your data where you go, and then I just watch, your cloud admins and everything just go, what is this database? Where has it appeared? And it's like, it came from Power BI. And they're like,
Yep.
who did that? And it's like, a business user did it. But it's also blurring those lines between, like, I remember when they did low code, like Power Platform's low code, but it's kind of like more like saying, no, this is your foray and your journey to get into code, because you get to a point where you end up being quite coder to build a lot of those Power Platform solutions. And it's kind of like Power BI introduces Datamate. Yeah, it gives you that entry-level database, but it's working your way towards enterprise scale building, because a business user might know how to build a report but not manage, a database. And now they're blurring that line and going, hey, we're going to journey you towards building your own data warehouse and journey you towards managing that. And how do you get data in and out of that? We're going to give you the low code, but it's working your way towards a code side. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that does grow up and what it looks like. And it's kind of cool though, because the more stuff that Power BI gets, the better and better it gets. Half-baked or not, still getting better. Like, it's the pros still outweigh the cons. So
100%, exactly.
Better and better. And more people.
Slow iterations and evolution over time.
And the downside is keeping up with it all. Like, because there's so many options now.
Yeah, well, exactly. It's targeting your expertise and where you want to learn at this point, for sure.
But I see, I don't know if you had any part in it, but those AKMS Learn modules, how awesome are they? Like,
there's a lot of great content in there.
If you haven't seen them, everyone, like, go check out those Learn modules. Like, it's free. It's totally free. But the other thing to play with those is when you see a conference come up like Ignite, like Build, even though they call it the Cloud Skills Challenge, think about it, cloud skills in terms of, well, Power Platform and Power BI is cloud. So when you look at those cloud skills challenges, what they are is a whole series of Learn modules that if you complete in a fixed period of time, like a 30-day window, you say, I want to do the Power Platform Challenge. Then go in and you'll get a series of Learn modules to complete. If you complete them all within like 30 days, you get a discount to exam. And then you can go test out your knowledge. So it's like, who wouldn't want to do that? I mean, if you're going to do the Learn modules anyway, why not, set aside an hour a day, half an hour a day, a couple of hours a week, join one of those cloud skills challenges, and then at the end of it, test your skills. And for Power BI pros, I mean, I love the fact they're getting more exams, so you can tell your employer or prospective employer, or even working with the community, you do those exams, and now you have, hey, I'm Power BI data analyst, and hey, I can now do enterprise data, the new one, the DP 500. So it's like, test your skills out. I do feel for data professionals, because I took that exam while it was in beta, and I went, this is a whole lot more than Power BI. We got Power BI, we got machine learning, we got Synapse, we got Python. I'm like, ooh. But,
there's a lot of Purview questions and R questions and other stuff.
Oh, yeah. The visual stuff is really cool, though. Accessibility now is in the exams. That's another thing that it's been there. It's been in industry for so long, but it's still sometimes seen as a secondary, not at the start of any project or piece of work. Think about accessibility.
You can thank Megan Longoria for that. She was one of the, just phrase it how I'm allowed to say it. We were both involved in the creation of the exam. I think is how I'm allowed to like, I can't get into specifics apparently, but that is a phrase I'm allowed to use. So yes, we were both involved on the project. So, and as you know, she is been a long-standing advocate of accessibility.
Oh yeah, and I got to watch her stream with you the other day. I jumped on and had a look at that the other day, because I love watching your stream. Like, there are a number of streams that I will get up at like 1, 2, 3 a.m. in the morning in Australia to watch. Like, It's not uncommon for me to be up on a Sunday morning at like 1 a.m. and be on the Guy in a Cube live stream. People are like, why do you do it? And I'm like, well, I could watch the recording, but it's not the same as being able to interact with everyone at the same time. Like, being able to interact with other data pros, it's the same reason I go to conferences. It's the same reason I do things like this live stream. It's like interacting with the community. It's so much fun, especially if you're someone who works in a team. If you're in a team with software developers and you're the only data professional, or you're in a really small, like small to medium business, there aren't a lot of data pros in those companies. You know, now you get this global community that you can interact with and talk shop, and you know, that's invaluable. It makes your job so much more fun.
Oh, I agree. It's a fun way to interact with the community in a broad perspective for sure, and I certainly enjoy them. But yeah, I appreciate if you ever are super late turning into any of mine, so thank you.
Oh yeah. This is why I don't mind when people book meetings with me. I'm like, book it at any time. Just make sure you send it like 12 hours ahead so I see the invite. And then I can set a bunch of alarms. Because if you send it while I'm asleep, there's no way I'm seeing that.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Right, more than happy to partake in the community. If I can set some alarms, I will be there. Or if I'm randomly awake, I will jump on and be there.
Excellent. Well, it's been fantastic today. I appreciate the topic, and I've certainly learned a bit about it. I've done some light applications with these, but I have not explored them nearly as much in the broader perspective of Office, or certainly with Purview. So I have some good takeaways today, at least when I have to present these to clients that I have, and I can help explain the art of possible, as I like to say.
I love it. And hey, I've got some takeaways. I got more things I need to try. I'm like, I want to see what happens when I delete a label. Or what happens when I try and share this across a tenant. I'm like, I'm going to have a bit more of a play.
B2B is going to be growing a lot in terms of features and guests on your own tenant. I know they're adding big things for that. So it should be some good stuff coming in the next 12 to 24 months for that.
Do you know, I did that once. This is one of the advantages we have in the Microsoft space is there are ways to spin up trial tenants. So I've spun up 2 trial tenants before and done B2B integration because I wanted to find out how to give someone access to our Power BI when they're in a whole nother tenant. So if you want to know that and you're not someone who administers your tenant, just go, I mean, as long as there's no policy in your company that blocks you, go spin up a couple of tenants using the community programs. Spin them up.
Yep.
Just play with the features. I mean, you have to learn so much more than just Power BI, like learning Azure Active Directory and Office 365. But you can do that, and then you know exactly how your Power BI tenant's going to look to someone else in another org, and you'll know how to work with your company to say, I need these settings changed so that we can use this functionality.
100%. Like go explore. They have sandboxes that are built for people to be able to test these things out. So.
Oh yeah. And if you get stuck, go check out the ideas.powerbi.com. Go check out the Power BI community. You know, we're all there for you globally if you get stuck. If you get stuck, put it on the forums. Go to your local user group or find a virtual one that's in a time zone that works for you. Jump on those. You know, see if you can't ask the questions, or if you have a play with something and you really like it, share it. You know, do a lightning talk, do a session, contact Reed. You know,
exactly.
Maybe it's good for his live stream. You know.
I always welcome new content creators, so happy to have people on for that. I also dropped a link to the Guy in the Cube video that shows you how to create a trial tenant if anybody is interested, so that is on the links as well.
Legend.
Excellent. Yeah, otherwise, again, thanks for coming on for this. Let me know if you ever have any other topics and presentations as well. I'm happy to have you back on at some point as well in the future.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you everyone for joining or watching this back later.
Yeah.
Have an awesome day. And if you've got any questions, you know, hit me up on Twitter. I'm there.
Yep. Our info's here, and then down in the link below in the description below the video, so give that a check. All right. Cheers, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider hitting that like and subscribe button. And if you want to help support this channel, take a look at our channel memberships as well. And last but not least, please consider sharing this video on social media to help pass on this awesome content and to help the channel grow. So until next time.